Welcome back. The name Bob Romero is incredibly well known here in the Hollywood makeup community for all form of makeup artistry. And in fact, Bob's father, Ray Romero, was a master makeup artist back into the 30s and 40s and into the 50s. And right now I'd like to welcome Bob. You know, it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
We both go way back. But, you know, we don't see each other that often. It's, you know, we don't really associate that often, you know, unless there's some professional event or something going on. And I'm really lucky and I'm really pleased that you're able to come in and to visit with us here on MUA TV
Well, thank you.
today.
It's a pleasure.
You know, you have a tremendous history here in the Hollywood makeup community. And what we're trying to do, and what we are doing, what we're succeeding in doing here on MUA TV, you know, we have over 3,000 daily viewers worldwide. This is not just nationwide, this is worldwide. And what MUA TV is doing is introducing to the world those people who have made up and who do today still make up the elite of the Hollywood motion picture and television makeup community. And I'm really pleased to have you here today because you are definitely one of those people. I'd like to, before we really get into how you got into the business, because you do have a tremendous history, and everyone out there, you know, would like to know all about you. Let's talk about your father a little while, just briefly. How did your father, obviously, you know, is very well known, and I'm sure that he was your mentor, and I'm sure that, you know, he helped you get into the business, you know, and or inspired you to want to be in the business.
A lot of it was by accident.
Yeah, let's start. How did your father get started in the business? And this is Ray.
Yeah,
Ray Romero.
His actual name was Charles, and he hated Chaz, Chuck, and Charlie. And when the San Francisco earthquake came was the day he moved there, and he watched the building his father had just walked into with his mother and brother.
Oh my!
And he collapsed. And that was 6 a.m, and he was like, 5.5 on a Surrey, because very few cars, and he had his 3-year-old sister with him. And about noontime, his father and mother crawled out, and he had lost his brother. And immediately wound up getting jobs because they had the only horses that didn't bolt and run. Because like where Chinatown was, collapsed 10 floors. It was like 10 floors of underground, from soybean factories to bordellos to whatever.
Soybean factory to especially the bordellos.
And they were all, and it was like a big line through that part of the area that was, it just dropped, 10 floors down.
Oh my God. You lost your uncle.
Yeah, and anyway, as it went on, the father wound up getting a job with the horses because he was hauling beer.
Right.
And they got a bar called the Great Northern, which he kind of managed and took over. And then around 1916, this guy came up and he says, "Well, you can team horses." And he said, yeah. So you can drive? I said, "Yeah, I can drive." He said, "Well, I need a car taken down to Los Angeles. All right, and have something I have to take to Los Angeles." That's what it was. And he said, "No problem." And he went over to his father. He said, "How do I find out how to get to Los Angeles?" And he said, "Well, we'll get a map and all that. No problem. It's one road. Just stay on the same road." And he was 15 and a half. And his sister wanted to go at 13. And well, that wasn't going to happen. So he walked outside the next day, and here was this car. A little, like a Model T truck. And he said, "What am I going to do with that?" And he said, "Take it to Los Angeles." He said, "Well, you're going to have to show me how to do it, So he had to sit and learn how to crank the car and get it up and get it going. And he literally went around the block.
To
learn how to drive the car.
And he was on his way to Los Angeles.
And he sat all day long, and he finally sat down with his sister, and they went and got gas, and mother gave him apples and everything to take.
Yes.
And he got in the car, and first thing he had to do was make a left-hand turn, and he was like, "I've never done this before." But he came down, and they were doing a film called Intolerance, just above Goleta, Santa Barbara.
D.W. Griffith.
and all that big beach sand scene, and they had all the
Yes.
buildings up there.
Good Lord, your father
That was his first
started
day.
on
Intolerance.
intolerance.
And they said, well, we got a job. He said, I got to take the car back down to L.A. And they said, what, would you take this with us? And I don't know what he took. I think it was 2 boxes, probably
Yes.
film. And he came down, and they hitched back up
Amazing.
and worked on intolerance to the end, and then went right on through.
Now, what did he do? What did he do? I mean, was he a driver first?
He was doing everything. He was like, they were shocked that he knew how to drive at that age.
Yes,
You know.
at 15.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was hauling beer carts
So,
and all that.
how did he make the transition
He,
into makeup?
that's a comical story. Sorry, Westmore, I got to tell the truth.
Oh boy, oh boy.
I think. Well, anyway, I'll tell the story.
You know it's true because he's turning purple.
Yeah,
Come on, makeup. Where's Travis?
he was at MGM, and they called him in, and they said, "We're going to start an apprenticeship program."
Yes.
And he was like, "Well, what's an apprentice do?" And he said, "Well, yes, you'll do whatever you're chosen to do."
Yes.
And they had one of the cameramen there, and I want to say it was Chuck Rocher, but because I think Chuck Rocher did all the battles with Pancho Villa and everything. It was somebody of that caliber. And they all sat there, and they said, well, you'll be an apprentice. And
Yes.
he said, you'll carry stuff, and you'll do this, and you'll write stuff down for a year or two, and maybe in a year, you'll learn how to load a magazine.
Yes.
And they said in a couple, 3 or 4 more years, maybe you'll get to carry them in and move them around, and
Yes.
maybe in 10 years, you'll learn how to operate the lens and everything
That's
like that.
one hell of a long
He said,
apprenticeship program.
maybe when you're 35, you'll learn how to, be a cameraman, and you'll learn lighting and everything like that. And he leaned over to Westmore, and he said, this is my father.
Which Westmore is this?
This was George Sr.
George.
And he kind of, my father looked at me, and he said, and what are you going to do with me? And Westmore said, well, he says, aren't you dating my sister? And that was Anita.
Oh, that's
Anita was
amazing.
gorgeous, just gorgeous. But anyway, he never said yes or no. And he said, I'll take you in as an apprentice, 1 year.
So George Westmore,
George and Monsignor.
yes, was in charge of makeup then.
Yeah.
At
And
MGM.
Monsignor. It was a split somehow.
Yes.
Because I think George passed away within a year or 2 after that.
I see.
Or it was Monty that passed away.
We're bringing Mike on as a guest, so we'll, maybe I should have you on as a guest at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
We shoot the shit on all the old stories.
They took him in, and the first day, he said, be here at 6 o'clock. And they came over at 6 o'clock, and the door was locked. And he sat till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And they came out, and they said, well, where were you? And he said, I was here at 6 o'clock. They said, tomorrow. And that went on for 2 or 3 days. And so finally, he got his shotgun out of the car and blew the locks off, and there was a hole like this, the way everybody shows me. And he was sitting on the desk. And he said, oh, yeah, come on in. He never said a word. And my father he said, put that on the desk there. So he left his shotgun on the desk. And they took him out into the back room and into the wig room. And he said, see all those Marie Antoinette wigs? He said, dress them. And he walked out. And he said, he's going. My dad said, I don't know how to dress these. He said, learn. He said, you want the job?
Trial
You learn.
by fire.
And he said, well, can
With a
anybody...
shotgun.
Yeah.
Hell, there's some fire.
And he said, can anybody help me? And he said, "No, anybody who helps you's fired," and walked out. So my dad had to run around and get books and everything and drawings and everything.
Research.
And
And who gave him this directive? It was which Westmore?
that one I don't know. I don't know
Yes.
which one of the two. Probably the both of them at that time.
Yes, yes.
Because he said they used to both follow him around all the time. And
Yes.
then when they found out he was learning how to do this, and he was
Okay.
figuring out how to work with Yak.
Now let me get this straight. There was George Westmore.
Yes. And Mont. I don't know how many years apart.
Okay, Monty
Monty Sr.
Senior.
Yes.
Now, that was George's eldest son, I believe. No, I think so. So they were.
It was Monty Jr. Mount Westmore.
Yes. Well, we're going to have
just
to get
down the way, yeah.
a real Westmore in
Yeah, we'll
here
get one of them in here.
to straighten this all out. You know, they just got a star, you know, on Hollywood
I was
Boulevard,
there.
you know, which was really terrific.
I was there.
Yeah, it was great. And all of the MUA TV audience was there, too, because we covered it. And it was really an exciting moment. Listen, okay, so your father got started at MGM under the Westmores.
Yes.
And then where did it progress from there?
Well, basically, he had to get all these books, and he got a book on how to work with yak, which I've never been able to find, because all those old wigs were yak hair.
Yes.
And if anybody's ever seen a yak, you kind of have to relate it to a collie. And a collie, when I get into hair, I'll start explaining. Collies, the thickest hairs off the back,
Yes.
and that allows water to run off.
Yes.
And off the backs of the legs and stuff is some of the finest hair.
Yes.
And it's like, I think on our body, we have 300 and some odd different kinds of hair.
Yes, different textures.
And then as hair goes white, it changes.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
But he had to go through all that, and finally started learning how to dress the wigs.
Yes.
And
So a big part of being a makeup artist then was
doing what you're told.
doing what you're told.
As an apprentice.
But hair pieces,
Hair pieces.
facial hair pieces, wigs,
Everything.
lace fronts, all
Lace
of
fronts.
this. Because most of the character makeups, I mean, 75% of what created character was done through hair work.
I would say when I came in at 65, I had to have a hair case with me every day.
Yes.
And if we go to a major studio, you would bounce from set to set.
Yes.
And you would just be,
Yes.
you were carrying everything. Nobody had carts.
Yes.
Oh, Carl Russell had a cart. Anyway.
I remember Carl Russell.
Yeah,
I remember when he was the sergeant at arms.
Yeah.
At
He was an
706.
interesting guy.
He was, yes.
And everybody would think, oh, Carl's here. And then Carl would sit and comb hair, and it's through his hands for hours and
Yes,
hours and
yeah.
hours. And he'd finally take hair this long and hair this long, and it would all be mixed totally dead center.
Yes.
And so he would just cut it one time, and he would lay these beards on, I mean, literally one half at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it would be all layered and tapered and everything. I looked like,
Because he cut the way he cut it.
He knew how
he
to-
cut it.
knew
The
how
way
to
he would bevel it
bevel
and
it
how to
and
pull
cut
it
it.
and cut. Exactly. That was one of the things that that I learned from Ben Nye, which I was really, really fortunate to learn hair work from Ben Nye Senior.
Yeah, senior.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But there's been so many really talented makeup artists that have come up through the ranks.
True.
That have been masters at hair work. Now, unfortunately, today,
Nobody
the
knows.
the art is like construction makeup. Obviously, construction makeup, you know, can't really be used as it was then because we have high definition. We have, you know, incredible lighting now. The lenses are perfect. So everything that we do makeup-wise has to be as perfect as possible, with the exception of my heavy 3/4 inch thick makeup right here on HD. But the thing is that hair work then, it could all be done. When I say hair work, I'm talking laying hair by hand onto the face. And very meticulously. And that art, as construction makeup, has now gone by the wayside.
By the wayside.
Because the kids just now want to buy a lace piece, glue it on, and I hate the use of the word glue.
And they have no idea.
Glue. It's adhesive. You know?
Tree sap.
Yeah, exactly. So they want to put this lace piece on, and obviously it's an advancement. You put it on, you put a lace piece on, and if the lace piece just isn't so ventilated perfectly around the edges, then you do a little overlay.
Yeah.
To the extent of working with hair by hand these days has almost boiled down to working with overlaying hair.
Yeah.
Which is really a shame. And what you and many others, and honestly, there aren't that many makeup artists that are still with us.
No,
that
very
can
few.
do. There's Frank Griffin
Brent Griffin
is.
still around. Al
yeah.
Fleming came in just when I
Yes,
came in.
exactly.
He's still
I mean,
around.
masters at laying hair. And
And Leonard, all those guys that were apprentices.
Leonard Engelman he does a beautiful job of laying hair.
See, a lot of us in '65, everything went from television went to color,
Yes.
and I mean there were 102 or 3 makeup people, and I think yes, 80 hairdressers. Now we got 3,000.
Yeah.
Anyway, they called up and they says, "Everybody, call your son, find out what he's doing."
Yes.
Because at that time there were no women in the business.
Right.
and hairdressers. But in makeup, there were none.
None.
I think one gal started TV around that
Yes,
time.
yeah. Mary Spina
Yes.
was one of the girls.
Yeah, one of the early
Yeah,
ones.
and she started at Max Factor. She was
Max
one of the
Factor.
counter girls at Max Factor.
Yeah. God, I remember going into factories. when I
Remember
was a
Betty?
kid.
There was Betty. There was Jeannie.
Jeannie.
And
Linda DeAndre's mother, what was her name?
oh god, oh
I
god.
remember Linda DeAndre.
can't
They
think
had a
of-
bathtub upstairs. Sorry, Linda. They had a bathtub upstairs.
Boy,
And
this
there were all these wigs in there, and here I walked over, and here was this little girl singing and dancing on
Fran.
these wigs. Fran.
Fran.
Yeah,
It was
I think
Fran.
that's it.
And then there was Hal King,
Yeah, Hal King.
who began teaching me
Yeah.
beauty makeup. And but those were the days. Those, I mean, those
was
were,
a totally
those were
different-
amazing, a completely different world of makeup artistry then.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we survived it, but we survived it. Now you are one of the remaining masters of hair work.
I guess I
You
am.
You are.
I mean, I
And-
find somebody once in a while that's got some pretty hot ideas, and I usually show them the easy way, and their jaw drops on the floor, and they go, "That's it?"
Yeah.
I said, "That's it." I tell people over the phone how to do hair.
Right. And you have some special techniques, some special
Mm-hmm.
exercises that Bob is going to share with the MUA TV audience. And believe me, when he's finished showing you how to lay hair, you're going to understand it and you're going to know it. And even though you may not be called upon very often to lay hair by hand, the knowledge of knowing how to and the exercise that you're able to derive by doing it, creates this brain to hand pathway that gives you the kind of dexterity that will enable you to do other things in makeup artistry really expertly. So it's definitely an exercise. I remember Ben Nye Sr. when he was teaching me how to lay hair. Ray Walston used to come in
Oh,
every day,
yeah.
and he was playing some character. I think it was he played Fagin from Oliver.
Yeah.
And he would come into Ben's shop on Santa Monica Boulevard every day, and for about a month or so, Ben would teach me how to lay hair on Ray Walston, my favorite Martian, right? And this is how
Yeah.
I began. Then he went from there and he taught me how to crimp and how to make chopped hair and work with the irons and all. But these were the days, these were the days. And these techniques still should be used, as I said, as exercises. And or if you're working on a picture and you don't have the budget to buy lace pieces, you know how to do this.
You know how to
But
do
I
it.
was going to say, Ben and I taught me, he says, shave your thigh. If you
Yeah.
have hair on your thigh, shave your upper thigh right here. Put your knee up like this,
That's it.
and then lay hair on your leg. And I did this for 6 months, maybe even longer, 7, 8 months, every day. Okay, kid, let's switch her. Now let's see. Okay, now do it blonde. Now let me see. Now do it brown. Now do it this. Do it that. Blend the hair. Do this. Do that. This is how I learned how to lay hair on my leg.
On the leg.
And
We all
so.
did that.
And then a directional hair laying. He'd cut pictures out of the magazine for me, and he'd say, "Here's a picture of a man's face. I want you to take different colored pencils, and I want you to draw the direction of how the hair is going to be laid on the
Oh, yeah.
face."
That's a workout.
And we would do that too. And so I was very fortunate. I was incredibly lucky at that time to meet Larry Abbott and
Larry.
I and Ben Nye Jr.
I used to go get my hair cut by Larry Abbott
Yes,
at Woodman and Riverside,
yes,
and I immediately had to go from there to Warner Brothers.
yes.
They checked my haircut out. And how long did it take? And in 3-4 weeks later, I had to go back and get another haircut, and they would check them. And I said, "What's this for?" I said, "Well, we're debating on taking him as an apprentice."
Larry.
Larry.
Wow.
And I was like 16, 17 then, so that's like 1957, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just driving.
Oh, amazing. All right, okay, now, how did you get started in the industry? From your father. From your father.
From my father.
What was it? Tell us about that moment. Think back. At one point, there was a moment when you suddenly realized, you know something? I want to do this.
I think it was 6 o'clock in the morning. My father told me to meet him over at the studio. I had a Sporting Goods, and that's another story. And after I had a little robbery, and I went to visit my father, and I said, what are you doing? You know, and he
So
was
you
like,
owned a sporting goods store?
Yeah, and he was doing what was that thing with Frank Sinatra, prison camp picture? It was over at Fox Studios. It was like July '65 or
Right.
June '65.
That's right
And-
before Ben Sr. retired.
Yeah, and they'd asked me about if I wanted to learn a little bit of makeup, and I said, well, I can do makeup. My father had a stroke. I had to sit in the garage with him and got him all ready for the greatest story ever told.
Yes.
And I think within 7-8 months from a total stroke, and one of the doctors came in and just gave him a bottle of pills and said, you're not going to come out of this. And Karloff
Boris.
picked him up and came over to the house and sat down and gave him a big lecture. And he picked him up, and he had a bad back at that time. And he literally picked him up, took him out, and threw him in the pool. And he says, you're going to have to learn to swim. Oh, you know, he jumped in, and I jumped in, and we pulled him over to the side. And he says, okay, now move your arm. And it was freezing.
And your father worked with Karloff then?
Worked with Karloff in the early days, even through the beginning of Frankenstein.
At Universal at Frankenstein.
Yeah.
In what degree was your father involved with Jack Pierce?
Ooh, well, he was with Pierce for quite a while. In those days, they would have like an assistant department head. They had 4 or 5 of them.
Yes.
And everybody that came in the studio was made up by them.
Yes.
Maybe background on the sets was
Yeah.
done on the set.
Yeah.
Because a key makeup artist at that time, do you know the story?
No, go ahead.
Okay. A key makeup artist
I know what you're going to say.
only stood under the key light, and that's where he reported to work.
There you go.
Never came in the department. Because at MGM, you punched in going in the gate.
That's right.
So a lot of people say, oh, I'm the key. I say, okay, go stand over there. You know,
Isn't that?
they don't know
right?
that what a department head
Yeah,
is.
the origin of the
Yeah.
word. Key
But the
makeup
studios
artist.
would have sometimes 6, 7 assistants make
Yes.
up everybody.
Yes.
And I mean, I can remember over at Disneyland one time, or Disney Studios one
Right.
time, with Bob Schiffer, and just watching all these guys just flailing through hair, and I mean, it was like, I thought, what am I looking at? You know, it was-
Right.
I was backed up, and they're doing Bullwhip Griffin and some other pictures.
Did you apprentice at any of the studios?
Not really.
No?
I had just been around with my dad. At that time, I think it was Freddie Blau and Mike
Yeah.
Hancock
Yes.
at Warner's.
Well, Freddie was. Yeah, they were at Warner's. Or at Columbia, you had Benny Lane, but you had Clay Campbell.
Clay Campbell had
Clay
just
Campbell
kind of
first.
left at that time.
Right. Right.
And because I remember one day I said, I got to have some white hair. And Benny Lane looked up and he said, oh. And they had along the windows, there were like these little short seats. You know?
Yes.
And he walked over and he just lifted up.
And it's
And
filled
it
with
was
hair.
white hair from one end to the other.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm
You know, when I first started my school, Columbia had just moved out.
Yeah.
And gone over to the Burbank studio, because the Burbank studio originally was Columbia Pictures and Warner Brothers combined. That
Yes.
was the Burbank studio, and the original Columbia Pictures studio lot over on Sunset remained vacant.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, Nick Vanoff, who produced the Julie Andrews Hour, which I
Yeah.
did the makeup for, his brother Boris Vanoff called me and he says, we've got all this space over here at Sunset Gower. We're calling it Sunset Gower Studios, which was the old Columbia. And how'd you like to come over and take a look at it? You might be able to use it maybe as a makeup school. So I didn't know what was going on over there. So I went over and I looked at it, and it was so dismal. But it was, and I knew this, it was not only Benny Lane's old office, but it was Clay Campbell's
Oh, yeah.
old office as well. Tiny little place. And I thought to myself, wow, what history in this place. I said, I think I'm going to make it a go. If they give me this space for next to nothing, I'll take it and I'll turn it into a makeup school. And so I said, I talked to Boris and I said, if we really make this, you give me a really good low price here to rent this space, what I'll do is I'll fix it up, I'll paint it, I'll hang all my pictures up everywhere, I'll turn it into a makeup school, and you can take people through here, prospective production companies, and say, this is our makeup department. And this is what they did. This is how they got Sunset Gower Studios off the ground. Then they started getting production company after production company coming in, saying, this is our makeup department, right? They didn't show them the rest of the lot. They had 1 or 2 of the stages fixed up. The rest of the stages
that's
were
right.
just abysmal. They were horrendous. Just spider webs and rotten woods and falling down rafters. But anyway, make a long story short, that's where I got started. The school got started right in that same place there.
Did you ever
And-
go in the police station?
No.
See the box on the wall?
No.
When they opened up the box, there were key rings with 50, 60, 70 keys on each one. And they just lines, and I thought, what is all that? He said, oh, this is for the whatever, and this is the Coke machine, this is that stage, that stage, that stage, that stage.
And
they
it's
went
all
on
right
and on
there
and
for the
on.
taking.
I thought, oh, my God.
Oh, my God. It was great, though. I loved working there. I don't know where we were going with this, but so we're back at Karloff, and now you say your father worked a little with Pierce at Universal?
Yeah, he was over there at Universal, and I think Karloff and Pierce had a big blowout.
Oh, see, I'm not
'Cause
aware of that.
my dad, oh yeah, and sorry if there's any of his family. Anyway, big blowout.
Why?
And
Why? Can you?
He
can
was
you
a
remember?
little stiff and stern and
Yeah,
kind of
Pierce.
on the rough side.
Yeah.
But what the problem was, when he raised his cheeks and stuff with tire patches. Like anybody ever fix a bicycle tire? That's what they used. And it took the skin off
Karloff.
off
Karloff.
Karloff. And I mean, it was Karloff's first pitcher, but he had been through World War I, and he was
Right.
not a. I mean, he was a rough boy.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can't remember who he had to fight with, but they said it was a one-punch fight.
These are great stories, folks. You're the myth breaker here.
And he went over and he said, "What can you do?" Because that had already been established.
Right.
They were going to use
To your
him.
father. Did you ever remember, did you know of a man, a makeup artist by the name of Joe Hadley?
Yeah.
Thank God somebody knows and remembers
Wow, there's
Joe
a name out of the
Hadley.
past.
Tell me about Joe Hadley.
Oh my God, I have to sit down and remember stuff on him. Trying to think of some of the stinker stuff that we did.
Now, I remember, let me tell you where I know the name Joe Hadley, because I never met Joe. Okay? But nobody ever knows the name Joe Hadley. It's Jack Pierce, obviously. But in a photograph of Jack Pierce doing Boris Karloff's Frankenstein makeup in 1931, the first time,
Yeah.
there is a man, a makeup artist, putting the scars on Karloff's arm.
Yeah.
And it said in the caption, makeup artist Joe
Hadley.
Hadley applies scars to Boris Karloff's hands while Jack Pierce finishes the touch-up on his forehead. No one has ever told me until this very moment that they recognized and knew the name Joe
Yeah.
Hadley.
I mean, there were only 102 in
Makeup
1965 when I
Right.
came in. A lot of them were retired, or
Yes.
they called them apprentices.
Yes.
And I remember them calling Monty the apprentice. And Monty came in, 46, right after
Yes.
the war. And
Amazing they
I was
called
trying to
him
think
an
who else
apprentice.
got called an apprentice. But it was just a terminology.
Right.
Because I think now we only have one circus clown.
Right.
And then I think we had 9. We had 9 circus clowns. It would take off sometimes during the summer.
Right.
And in 65, a lot of them came back, like Gene Klum.
Right. Right. I
And
remember the name.
Gene Klum used to wear like the old cowboy hat, but dressed like an Indian, smooth
Yes.
around, dome
Yes.
on the top.
Yes.
Carried
So
two-
back to Joe.
Carried 245
Joe
automatics.
Hadley. I only knew one other makeup artist that was a cowboy, Larry Darr.
Larry Darr.
Do you remember Larry Darr?
Yes, I do.
What a great guy.
Interesting guy.
Oh, so interesting. I worked with him. We were on staff at ABC Television together. And I swear to you, I learned more about beauty makeup from Larry Darr than I did from anybody.
Yeah.
Because the guy could really paint. I mean, he would take watercolor.
All
And
those
he-
guys.
And he would do eye makeup with watercolor. We were working the Lawrence Welk show in those days. And I used to sit and study him, you know, and copy what he did. And then try to, you know, change it a little here and there to give it my own style. But it was really Larry Darr.
Yeah, my father was an interesting painter, and I used to watch him with watercolors and stuff.
Yes.
And when he was like 11, they had the World's Fair in San Francisco in 1912.
Yeah.
And I think he took like 2 or 3 of the first and second places.
Yes.
Because there were 6 awards.
Yeah.
And I was telling Bob Stack.
Yes.
And Bob Stack, oh, okay. And
Robert Stack, for you people
Robert
out there.
Stack, the actor,
Yeah.
did Unsolved Mysteries and
Right. The original, The Untouchables.
Untouchables. Phew, thank you.
Kiva Hoffman. Remember Kiva Hoffman?
Kiva Hoffman.
Yeah.
What a jewel.
Yeah, what a wonderful man. I have a Kiva Hoffman story. I was doing makeup on Rona Barrett at ABC Television, and I was a real highlight and shadows slinger, you know, highlight and shading to the max, with Pancake to boot. And he was retiring, and he was selling all of his makeup off and all this and that. And he wanted to show me this yellow highlight. Do you
Yellow
remember
highlight.
his yellow highlight?
What's the
and
name of it, though? Is there
I can't
another
remember
name?
what the
There
hell it was
another
called.
name for it.
Yeah, well, he didn't call it the yellow highlight.
It was
I
like a
ended up
highlight,
calling it
yeah.
the yellow highlight.
It was like highlight or something.
Something.
It was a great product.
Something like that. Yeah, right. And it was like an eyeshadow. It was a powder, water applied, type of pancake type of makeup that was yellow. And he would apply it here and here and here and here, and he'd sweep it up this way and sweep it up that way with a sponge. And he'd go, look, he'd go, it rejuvenates the face. And I'm looking at it, I'm saying, yeah, you know what? It really does do that. Maybe if we went in and did it a little more finitely, you know, and this and that. So I started playing around with it. And I invited him one day over to the set. We used to do Rona Barrett's show on the old stage where they did, the original stage where they did General Hospital. And we worked in the General Hospital makeup room. So Kiva, little, delicate, little old man, had to have been like 80 years old. Easy. He comes, I brought him into ABC. I went and picked him up, brought him into ABC, sat him in the corner. And I went to Rowan and I said, Rowan, I says, there's this older makeup artist, wants to watch me do your makeup. Please don't say no. Let me do this. And she says, oh, sure, it's okay. So I introduced her to Kiva Hoffman, and he sat there, and I started doing her makeup and the pancake and the tattoo and the this and that and the shading and the you know, the number two. I won't say what it used to be called. The number two here and here, right? And you old timers know what it used to be called. And then I got the yellow highlight and his yellow stuff, whatever it was called, and wet it. I did under the eyes and the nasolabial folds and here and right in through here to pull the depression up between the eyebrows, and pulled her temples out and lifted her cheekbones with it. And I looked back at him and he was crying. He was crying.
Really?
And she walked out and he was like wiping his tears. And she walked out of the room and I went up to him and I says, Kiva, are you okay? You know, is everything all right? And he says, yes. He says, I've never seen anybody use my yellow like that before. That's exactly how I intended it to be used.
Wow.
He says, God bless you, son, God bless you. And that was such a great moment in my life to have that validation from a man who, up until that time, I had only seen his name on the screen.
Yeah.
And that's why this MUA TV to me is so important. Because how many people up to now have only seen your name on the screen and have never been able to meet you, hear you talk, see you work? Not just in this city, but worldwide.
Yeah.
Now they're able to do that. You see? And that's why I'm so excited about this. You know, so, we've got, you got to help me do this. You have to help me pull together the retirees.
That could happen?
As many retirees as we can so that we can document them.
We should get Dan Greenway.
For
He
Danny
lives down in
Greenway.
Lives down in
Where is
Tijuana, and
he?
I think he's 90.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Well, you know, Lee.
Totally coherent.
Lee Greenway was one of my instructors
Lee was
over at
wonderful.
CBS with Bud Sweeney. That's
Lee
where I
was
got
international
started.
live bird champion shotgun.
Really?
For years.
Wow. Well, you know, Lee did the thing with James Arness.
Yes, he did.
Lee used to take me, I was a kid. I was working with Ben Nye Jr. at CBS Television, and Bud Sweeney would sit in his office all day long playing solitaire, right? And this Lupa Leapy running
Oh,
around.
Lupa Leapy, yeah.
Yeah, right? And Lee Greenway would take me into the back room and he'd say, here, I'm going to show you how to do an acid burn, right? And he'd take my hand and he'd pour non-flexible collodion all over my hand, and then he'd dunk my hand into some water. And pull it out, and it would be all white and blistered. And he'd say, see, that's an acid burn.
That's what I did on my test.
Yeah,
Exactly that way.
There you are. That's Lee Greenway, yeah. And he was doing God, I can't remember what show he was doing over at CBS Television City at that time. But he was such a great guy. He had such class and such dignity, you know. And we always had to
Indian.
wear suits then anyway.
They were all
remember?
half Indian.
Yeah.
And Al was the barber for, was it Tommy Dorsey?
You're kidding,
Or
really?
Glenn, what's his name?
You know, I mean, when we think of
But he was
makeup
the
families,
barber for the bands.
right?
And he used to travel with them.
Yes.
And I mean, this guy cut hair like Larry Abbott cut. I mean, when
Yeah.
Larry Abbott came in, I
Yes.
used to go in, I had to get my hair cut. And
Yes.
Al would sit and go through those haircuts.
Yes.
And he would sit and take these little barber combs, I mean, like hair by hair by
Yeah.
hair. And I had to time him. I had to time him from the minute he started, the minute it stopped. And I have one of these, I still got the watch, it doesn't work anymore. And it was like one of the World War II pilots' watches,
Wow.
and it had the starter.
Are you a pilot?
No,
No, okay.
no.
Thought maybe
If
I'd-
I'm drunk, I can fly.
Boy, can't we all? I tell you what, you know what? This is so great. I'm so happy that you're here today. We're going to stop just for 1 second,
Okay.
okay? And we're going to be right back, right after these words. Don't you go away.